What was a moment in your life that felt like a horror movie scene? Before we start with the first story, please hit a subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. I was exploring an abandoned mental asylum and then got the scare of my life when a scary-looking person inside one of the rooms was just staring at me without moving. Turns out some joker had left a cardboard cutout there. Story 2. Went into a real deep woods hike for only the second time in my life. My GPS broke and had to rely on my compass. Got turned around a few times because I couldn't remember the direction I came from, and it was getting dark. Lost the trail way. But the woods are weirdly silent in the dark and alone. It was around 2 a.m. by the time I found the trailhead. Story 3. My mom is quite the sleep talker, but it's usually pretty short and incoherent when it happens. One night as a teenager, I woke up to her scream yelling the Hail Mary prayer. My bedroom was across the house and upstairs. Difficult to get back to sleep after that one. Story 4. Got T-boned by a fully loaded gravel truck in my Pontiac Grand Prix. Woke up several hours, 2 surgeries later and 200 miles from my hometown. Had been lucid but not conscious for hours. Was in the middle of a sentence when I came to. Felt like time traveling and teleporting. And sometimes I get this uneasy feeling that I left behind a different world than I was. Story 5. 2 days after my now boyfriend told me he liked me, he fell from a zipline and broke his back. Almost died. 6 months later, he got into a car wreck from a drunk driver. Almost died. 6 months after that, he passed out and had to have emergency brain surgery. Again, almost died. I now have severe anxiety, separation anxiety, and PTSD. That whole year was a fucking nightmare. Edit. We're both okay now. The brain injury was almost a year ago, but TBIs take a while to heal, so he still has side effects. Thankfully, our relationship is still strong. He's physically getting better, and I'm healing emotionally too. Lucky for him, the trauma of the injuries has caused him to forget the majority of the pain and memories of the... Story 6. I am a baby in a car seat in between cousins in back seat. Dad is driving. This is in the 80s, and it is my aunt's insistence that I am in this seat even though I am like 5. A sleeping semi-driver is coming over into our lane and there is a cliff on other side. Basically, my dad did some amazing driving, but semi blew us up. I am uninjured sitting in the seat swinging my legs while everyone is unconscious. They all wake groaning. Dad doesn't wake up. Long story short, just minor scrapes and Dad has broken leg. But the crunch of metal in those few seconds, minute of being the only alive person was quite fear-inducing. Story 7. I was driving home on backcountry roads at midnight in heavy fog. Like can't see 10 feet in front of you thick. Suddenly I see an all-white silhouette running in front of the car. Every hair on my body stood up. I immediately think, oh God, oh fuck. It's a fucking woman in white. I'm gonna fucking die. Nope, just a drunken redneck who dove into the ditch. Story 8. So I was about 8 at the time. It was something like 1 or 2 in the morning. I go to the bathroom. It is rather bright outside despite the time. I'm sitting on the toilet, playing with the curtain. It comes up enough, and I see a shadow standing outside the window. I scream, and my mom comes running. I tell her there is someone standing outside the bathroom window. Now my mom, being the crazy motherfucker she is, throws open the curtain, opens the window, ready to fight a motherfucker. Guy outside the window. Nope. Fucking bear. Window is promptly shut and I'm quickly ushered out of the bathroom. This event furthers the talk my parents had been having off and on about. On a side note, we moved about 2 years later for a number of other reasons. Funny enough, there is now a bear roaming this neighborhood. He's been spotted on my parents' front porch at least twice now. Story 9. Driving home from work at 23, listening to my favorite song. I pull up to a red light and see this guy on a motorcycle coming up next to me in the other lane. I rolled down my window to compliment his bike when he stops. He doesn't, and runs the red light. He hits a car going at least 55 miles per hour. His motorcycle shatters apart. He goes flying, hits the hood of another car, and lands on the ground and rolls into the curb, no helmet. The car he hit with his motorcycle was totaled. I had to step over his body to talk to the police. He was still alive when they got there. I regret not holding his hand. It was just a normal day, and all of a sudden it felt like the rug was pulled from out beneath me. He was only 18. Edit. The song was Sunny by Boney M, for those curious. Story 10. When I was February 13th, 2024, I had to stay home alone every day after school while my parents worked. One day there was a knock at the door. I didn't answer obviously because I was just a kid, and whoever it was started slowly trying to turn the locked doorknob. I called my mom after they left, and while I was on the phone with her, the back door started getting kicked down. As I was frantically trying to tell her I needed help, the phone call dropped and I just had to run. Edit. For those wondering, we had an alarm system, so luckily when it started going off, it scared them off. I was luckily able to run to my neighbor's house for help, but we still to this day have no idea who it was. Story 11. The town where I went to college had a scarecrow building contest a few years ago, and had them all lined up along the main road. There were some traditional-looking ones, some scary-looking ones, and some with themed outfits like football players or rock star. One day I was walking down the main road to get something from the gas station. There was almost no traffic, and hardly anyone else outside. Suddenly, this really thick fog rolled in, much thicker than what they normally get in this town. So there I was, walking down a street with no one else around. It's quiet. And there are weird-looking scarecrows every 10 feet behind and in front of me. It was like something out of a Stephen King movie. Story 12. I was hanging out alone at home listening to music in the living room. The house was single-level ranch, and I was 20 at the time. My sister came home and noticed someone popping their head up looking in the large living room window. She was a bit drunk, so I thought she was imagining it. Nevertheless, we decided to close, lock all the windows, and sleep in same bedroom. I went to back bedroom at other end of the house to lock window, and found it open with screen removed from tracks, suggesting someone tried to get in from outside. I freaked out. Given music I was listening to was loud, I would not have heard someone enter and approach until they were upon me. I guess they heard my sister come home, came around front to look in window, and then took off. It creeps me out to know this person might have watched me from front window without my noticing, and then proceeded to back window to break in. I always wonder what would have happened if my sister didn't come home when she did. I don't think robbery was intent if it was clear I was in the house. Story 13. I visited a friend in a psych hospital, and I was advocating for something she needed. I got into the elevator, and a nurse stuck her head in and whispered, "Don't stop asking questions," and then the doors shut, and I never saw her again. For the record, I've been to plenty of psych hospitals with other friends, and this is the only one that was remotely a horror movie. The rest were perfectly normal hospitals. Also, this one is closed. So please don't not get medical care you need because I went to a creepy hospital 10 years ago. Story 14. Watching some parents cook in the ditch while their children screamed half-naked on the side of the road in sub-zero weather. Also holding onto someone's arm while a crusher was accidentally engaged, repeatedly yelling, "Stop the crusher," as he was slowly sucked. That you only see in movies, or hear about through me. Story 15. My dad came home high off his ass, not unusual, and when I 16 Fahrenheits at the time, wouldn't let him in my little brother's room to say goodnight. We got into it, also not unusual. He was trying to force his way past me, and he's at least 2 times my size on a good day, so I just tried to divert his attention to steer him away from my brothers. Wasn't hard to get him angry about something else, and he carried me more than dragged me outside. I was trying to get away, but just got slammed into the wall a few times for my trouble. In our neighborhood, nobody's gonna call the police on you, so he wasn't worried about taking it outside to avoid a little extra property damage. He held me down with his knees on my elbows and started hitting me. I don't remember what he was yelling about, and I don't really care. I was kicking as much as I could and got in a couple good shots to his groin, but he just put more of his weight on me. My older brother, 18 at the time, got home from work maybe a few minutes in. He usually got back just before my father did, and the two of us were almost always able to de-escalate him without too much trouble. And I remember him coming down the street at a dead run and basically just barreling into my dad to tackle him off me. My brother's a pretty wiry guy, but he has some muscle on him and is a much better match for our father. My dad pulled his gun, and I panicked and tried to take him down from behind. Broke a bottle over his head. We were both trying to wrestle him down, and he got a couple shots off. Caught my brother off guard enough to get the upper hand. I stomped on his forearm hard enough to get the gun out of play. I don't even remember who was hurt and how at that point I can place things looking back, but all I remember is a hell ton of adrenaline. I'm not even sure I was really scared. I know some of our neighbors were out on their porches watching. That's how people tend to react to this sort of thing here. Between my brother and I, we got our dad out cold after a couple good hits of his head on the asphalt, but we got at least as good as we gave. This is where things start getting really hazy, and I'm not quite sure how conscious I was or how much I don't remember. My brother would be next to me and I'd blink and he'd be gone, and I couldn't really hear anything except myself breathing, like I was underwater or something. In the years since, my brothers filled me in somewhat on the details, so as far as I can piece things together, this is what happened. My brother checked to make sure our dad was really unconscious, but not dead, and that I was vaguely coherent, and then he ran inside, told our little brothers to hide and not to leave their room no matter what. When he came back outside, he said he knew he had to call the cops. This was the worst fight the three of us have ever gotten into, and the first time my brother and I couldn't just stitch each other up and be. I was and am still a minor, and he knew CPS would get involved if the police knew my father had hurt me. My brother and I have always worked hard to avoid CPS intervention and the high risk of being separated from our little brothers and each other. My brother got me up, slid me into the driver's side of my dad's car, and told me to step on the gas and keep going until I crashed. I don't remember this, but apparently the message got through. I think I hit someone else's car pretty hard as they came down the street the other direction. My brother called 911, reported the car accident, and that he and my dad had gotten into a bad. The next thing I remember is waking up in the hospital. I had lacerations over my upper body from going halfway through the windshield, 5 broken ribs and others cracked or bruised, a fractured sternum, quite a bit of internal bleeding from blunt abdominal trauma, injured spleen, and right hemothorax, shattered cheekbone, and severe concussion, skull fracture, and cerebral contusion. I nearly died, and from the fact that my brother still won't tell me his own injuries, I assume he was about as close. They wouldn't let me see my brother or father, and I thought they were dead. I learned later that they'd both been arrested. Both were eventually convicted and sentenced. That night that we were fighting, that was the last time I touched my brother. I wish I'd hugged. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like more of this, please hit a like button and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below. I'll see you in the next video.